Hello and welcome to It's All About You, the best show about you on the internet. I am B. Dave Walters, writer, life coach, talk radio host, college professor. Actually, I'm not even a professor anymore because I don't teach. I'm like an associate director, so I don't know what's above a professor. I don't know, but I'm that. This is episode number... Oh, I lost it. I changed my thing. This is episode 79. And I think I'm going to call it Guilt. Sorry, I have to look at this because I have my giant cartoon stopwatch here to make sure I don't talk too much. Guilt. I may have already done an episode on guilt, and if so, this is Guilt Part 2. I guess you know what it's called because you've already seen the words go by at the beginning. Now, let me share something with you, a question that I received off of FormSpring. Now, you can ask me anything. You can submit questions, you can give your name, or you can ask anonymously by submitting them to a website called FormSpring. Form like membership form, spring like the season.me, like me, /B Dave Walters. Okay. Ooh, now I have the hiccups. I'm getting off to a rough start. If it gets too much bumpier, I'm going to start this video over, but I'm just letting it go right now so you can see the real, authentic me. Okay, here's a question. I have deep-seated guilt issues which have made my self-esteem lead me down paths of bad relationships and walking away from the only decent relationship of my life. How do I rid myself of the guilt to start again on this decent relationship? Again. I have deep-seated guilt issues which have made my self-esteem lead me down paths of bad relationships and walking away from the only decent relationship of my life. How do I rid the guilt to start again on this decent relationship? Now, an interesting thing happened to me. I wrote an article some time ago, actually, but I republished it on BeliefNet called, what was it called? Let me see, here's the title. The whole title, so you can find it, was Homosexuality, Virginity, Guilt, and Sex. Or does God want you to wait till marriage? Again, homosexuality, virginity, guilt, and sex. Or does God want you to wait till marriage? You can see that on my blog. It's features.beliefnet.com /a reason to smile. And I link everything off of my webpage, which is about.me /B Dave Walters. About.me, like me, /B Dave Walters. You can find links to the videos, the radio, the articles, everything. The reason why I bring this up is the whole point behind this article was that people didn't really need to feel guilty because of who they were and what they are and, quite frankly, what God made you to be. And I kind of look at all the individual Bible verses that people use to justify their hatred and intolerance, and I kind of show why you really don't have to worry about that too much. And the reason why I bring it up in relation to this idea about guilt is it's kind of taken on a new life on Facebook lately, and it's been getting shared a lot. It's been shared like 1,100 times, which is crazy. Like 1,100 people like this article enough that they wanted to share it with somebody else. So I feel really good about that. But it's interesting how this concept of guilt plays out again and again in our lives, especially if it's something that we can't control. Like a lot of times people have very non-specific feelings of guilt. Based on your religious upbringing, a lot of the times, based on your familial upbringing, a lot of times. I know some religions, like Catholicism, put a huge amount of emphasis on guilt and how terrible we are and confession, and you got to get it all off your chest and constantly and repeatedly asking for forgiveness from a God who really doesn't like you and is kind of this close to just smashing you with a lightning bolt. And then some cultures, again, especially mothers, use guilt to manipulate us into doing things, right? And so it is very common, or especially, we've talked again and again about how when you're looking for an issue, and we'll talk about it now, when you're trying to figure out what's going on, the first thing you need to do is look at the very first time you felt this way. Okay? Very first time. Now, this person said she has deep-seated guilt issues. I assume she knows what it is. I keep saying she. I don't know. My vibe off of that is that it was written by a woman. I mean, I may or may not. So if you're a guy and you sent this in, actually, I know I had another question that was submitted by a woman that basically was asking the same thing. So it might have even been the same person who asked twice. So if you know what exactly happened and what you're guilty about, that's fine. But if you don't know, or if there's something that you're not quite sure how to deal with, always look back at the earliest memory you have of it. The earliest memory you have of it happening. Now, I know off the top of my head, I have two friends. One whose mother passed away from cancer when he was 13, I think, which of course is sad, but he feels guilty like 20 years later that his mom passed away. That this idea that I just should have done something. And I'm like, what? What should you have done? You know, I had another person that shared with me that their father had a heart attack in front of them and died, which again, terrible. No kid should have to see that. But the same thing, she's spent, 20 plus years living into this idea of I should have done something. And I was like, well, were you a EMT? Were you an emergency tech? No. Were you a heart surgeon? No. Were you a doctor? No. Nurse? No. Soldier? No. Paramedic? No. Then what were you supposed to do? You weren't a miracle worker. What were you supposed to do? Right? So when you look at these situations that you're so guilty about, first and foremost, ask yourself, did you even do anything that you need to feel guilty about? Right? Is there anything that you reasonably could have expected to do differently? Now, here is a big sign as to whether or not you're still kind of living into these past decisions that a child made. We talk often again and again about how a lot of times we're living into the decisions that, a 5 or 10-year-old made about life because something happens, something traumatic, and we make our decision right there in that moment about what the world is like. And again, it's not a logical, rational thing where 8-year-old you is sitting there thinking, my father works too much and doesn't spend time with me. Therefore, he doesn't care about me. And therefore, that moving forward in my life, any male that shows me neglect loves me. It's not like that, okay? It's not like that at all, all right? So when you look at these situations, if you can see now through your adult eyes, well, no, I couldn't have done anything. I just still feel bad about it. That's a big red flag right there. If your grown-up brain can look at this and be like, nah, I'm really not, I don't know what the problem here is, and yet you still feel like this emotional knot, that's a big sign that it's not you today that even has the problem. It's the decisions you're living into from 20 years ago, all right? So as to how to let this go, a couple things. First of all, I kind of have two different answers, but they connect. The first one is, if you know it was a specific thing you did, like you cheated on someone and broke their heart, or you stole something, or something, tangible that I think any jury of your peers would hear that you did and would be like, whoa, that's not cool, right? Well, then the first thing you need to do is at least forgive yourself. That's the first thing. All healing always starts with that. Because here's the thing, like we've said again and again, either you did what you did or you didn't do what you didn't do, and it's done. It's in the past, okay? Now, if you learn from it and you're trying to do better and you're trying to grow from it, so be it, okay? Now, as always, forgiveness doesn't necessarily mean everything's okay. Maybe what you did isn't okay, right? But there's no point in carrying around that guilt and desire for punishment anymore, all right? Again, holding on to that resentment, even resentment for yourself, it's like acid that burns the bottle that it's stored in, right? So, first thing you got to do is release this pent-up aggression and negativity that you still have for yourself, okay? You really have to accept that you're not that person anymore, okay? That's the first thing. And if you need to hear it from someone else, I forgive you. I understand. It was a mistake. You didn't mean it. You won't do it again. I forgive you. Okay? Second thing, if possible, attempt to make some sort of restitution to the person that you hurt. Okay? This may or may not be the case. And quite frankly, they may or may not be willing to forgive you. Let's be real, right? Just because you turn around. I remember, if you remember that old movie, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Which is just a great movie, by the way. The escaped convicts go and two of them get baptized and they're like, well, my sins are wiped clean, I don't have to go to jail. And George Clooney's like, well, this might square you with the Lord, but the state of Mississippi is a little more hard-nosed. Okay? So just you finding this inner forgiveness does not mean you're going to find external forgiveness. But I'll let you in on a secret. Once you find inner forgiveness, you don't need external forgiveness because you're actually not looking for their forgiveness, you're looking for your forgiveness. Because even if they told you today, you know what, it's all right, I understand. If you're not in a place where you can accept that, then you won't accept that. You will feel just as guilty and yucky and twisted up inside as you feel right now, okay? So what you're looking for doesn't come from anybody else. It comes from you. It comes from inside, okay? And if you're a spiritual religious person and you can connect with your Creator to feel that divine forgiveness, which is there, I can tell you, God understands because it's God's job to understand, right? Then you can start letting that go. Now, if you can, again, like I said, if you can make it up to the person that you hurt then that's fine. You should make it up to them, even if you just reach out to them and tell them that you're sorry. Like I can tell you from my own personal experience, I've worked pretty hard not to step on people's toes in my life. But there was one girl, that I can truly say I really did wrong. My buddy and I met her at the same time. My buddy had a big crush on her. She had a crush on me. So we got together and we were sort of an item for a while. And then we kind of just, trailed off like things do in college. And so my buddy was pursuing her again. And she and I ended up getting back together. Right? So he got really, really mad at both of us about the fact that we got back together even though he liked her. Does this make sense? You follow me? And the mistake I made was I kind of let all the blame get put on her. I really did, and somehow she ended up being the bad guy in the whole situation, and I was totally wrong about it, totally wrong. And it's literally the one regret I have in my life. I've said again and again, I've lived my life without regrets, but I can say I do have that one, that I wish that she didn't have to endure whatever emotional pain that she dealt with from that, because it was my mistake. Now, well, it was a collective thing. It was just a messed up situation, but either way, it didn't need to all get put on her. And I looked for her, man, that happened in like 1997, and I think I found her in 2010, right? And I've been looking for her. Facebook helped with that, and I was able to express to her truly, it's like, I'm sorry, I did it, it was wrong. She'd gone on, she married somebody else, I'd gone on, I married somebody else. It wasn't that I was trying to get back with her romantically. I just wanted to express to her the fact that I knew I had done the wrong thing, and I was sorry for it. And of course to her, it was water under the bridge now. She's like, yeah, it hurt at the time, but I understand, life goes on. So it is, and now we're cool, we talk, right? So, if possible, make some sort of restitution to this person. If you took something from them, try and restore them back to where they were, better than they were. If it's somebody's feelings that you hurt, just express to them that you're sorry and that you want to make it up to them somehow. Again, they may or may not accept you making it up to them, okay? Now, just kind of tie this back into the very first thing I said, how I mentioned that article that I wrote. It may be that you don't have anything to feel guilty about, okay? Like, I have another friend of mine who was raised in a fairly restrictive religious environment. I won't mention what religion. And, again, it's another one of the ones that, like, really emphasizes guilt, right? And unworthiness. And so this person has gone through their life with this sense of just the fact that they are who they are has made them somehow this bad, terrible person, and they label all the things that they do and all the things that they want as bad, right? And finally, I just said last night, I'm like, well, first of all, good and bad is totally relative. I've said this all the time. There aren't any moral absolutes. There just aren't. I wish there were. There are not. Okay, because anything you can tell me is an absolute good or an absolute wrong, I can tell you there was times or at least situations where it's not that bad or it's not that good, right? That's just kind of the confusion of life that we live on this third dimensional plane, right? So there's no point in building things up in your mind like they're all good or all bad. Does that make sense? Especially if you're going to do them anyway. This is the craziest thing, right? Now again, I'm straight, I'm married, but I've gone to bat defending people's rights to be gay on numerous occasions because God knows how he made them, right? Some people are born that way, some people that choose it. That's between them and God. It's not up to me to pass judgment on them or what I believe. Because again, acceptance and approval are not the same thing. I can accept anybody. I think the only thing I can't accept is hurting kids. So if you're hurting kids, stop, right? But if you're making a choice as a consenting adult and you're not harming anybody else, good times. Really, if you're not harming yourself too. But yeah, do your thing, right? But all these like negative comments that were coming out in the process of talking about this on Facebook. One of the people that was talking the most trash, and I almost forgot something awesome that happened. I'm going to tell you in a second. But one of the people that was talking the most trash about how wrong I was to basically say them being gay was between them and God is freaking bisexual. How's that work? Right? It's up on his Facebook profile that he likes guys, and yet he's like how homosexuality is this abomination. And I'm like, whoa, bro, come on. What is this? Right? Because he's not doing anything but painting himself into a corner. Because if you truly believe that it's this thing that God hates and is going to destroy you for, then why are you doing it? Okay? Or if you're like, I absolutely have to do it, it's like who I am, it's what I've been compelled to do, then maybe your religious programming is what is not lining up right. Maybe the things that you've been taught as a child no longer apply to your life as an adult. And that's okay. Because let me tell you something, if God intended us all to see things one way, there'd only been one way to see them. You know, human beings all got eyeballs. We don't have antennas like insects, right? Apparently God intended us to perceive things this way, right? We can't use echolocation like dolphins, okay? That's not how we're supposed to interact with the world, or we'd be able to, right? So apparently there's lots of different ways to approach faith. There's lots of different ways to approach God. There's lots of different ways to be comfortable in your own skin. Okay. Now, the awesome thing that happened in the midst of this conversation, right, going back and forth about this, I was accused twice in fact, I was accused of being a false prophet. Can you believe that? How awesome is that? That I was accused of being like this religious dissident that's leading people astray. That is awesome. Let me tell you why that's awesome. You know how in the book of Revelations, God said, you were lukewarm, so I will spit you out, right? If I am coming across direct enough that I am offending people that are using religion to justify hatred, intolerance, and bigotry, then I am doing something right, okay? If I'm reaching enough people to let them know, hey, you know, you don't really have to worry about what other people are telling you, worry about what God's telling you in here, and that is causing other people to react negatively, that means my message is getting out, and thank God for it. Because here's the thing, my job, talking about guilt, my job is to help people that are hurting. That's what I do. And I'm especially here to help people that are hurting, that have been damaged at the hands of the people that should have been lifting them up. Because the reality of the matter is the Christians in the world and all the religious people in the world, the people that seem to believe that there is something beyond this life, that there is a higher authority, you know, that there is a higher purpose and a higher law, those are the people that should be leading the charge for the healing of mankind, kind of like Jesus Christ did. But unfortunately, that's not what happens. They're the ones that are out there attacking people blindly, just saying misguided, judgmental stuff to strangers, and all that does is make people shut down. So needless to say, my work is pretty difficult, honestly, to kind of help people see, as I've said before, that Jesus is not a jerk, that God's not a jerk, that life is actually really awesome, and religion is fantastic, right? It's just people take it and do some yucky things with it, right? It's kind of like, you know, you can take a knife and you can cut bread with it, or you can shank somebody, right? It's a tool. It's a tool. So to be able to, you know, have rattled some people's cages to such a degree that they have to drop that on me, I'm all like, that is awesome. Because if you're in this world trying to spread some light, spread some love, and reach people, in order to put yourself out there enough that the people that need you can find you, you're going to expose yourself to the haters also. It's a package deal. And I can tell you personally, I will wade through 10,000 haters if that's what it takes to just ease the suffering of one human being. And help one person to look at it and see, you know what, Christian people and religious people and spiritual people really aren't that bad. You know, they're not all insane wackos that want to have nuclear wars. Yeah. So that's why I'm always going to bat. I'm going to bat for Big JC. I go to bat for Buddha. You know, obviously those two things resonate with me the most. But, you know, I've repped for Hindus. I've repped for Muslims, you know. It's whatever you need to do in this world to feel comfortable in your own skin and connect with your Creator. Okay? And if you want to get over this concept of dealing with guilt, again, I truly invite you to find a spiritual way to do it. Not necessarily a religious way to do it. Because I'm about out of time. But I'm going to tell you again, God knows how He made you. He knew what was in your mind. He knew what was in your heart. He knew what was in your environment. He knows everything that went into your mistake and what you did or what you didn't do. Okay? And He loves you anyway. So release it. Because if the God that knows everything can love you in spite of it, man, I'm here to tell you that He can, then you can love you in spite of it. And I can love you in spite of it. And that means someone else can love you in spite of it. So don't worry about it. Let it go. Like always, you can find out more about me on my website, about.me/B Dave Walters. You're great, and I love you. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye. By the way, you like my sweater vest here? I'm all Mr. Rogers rocking this. How rad is this? I'm all respectful. This is my Mr. Walters look. I'm Mr. Walters. Okay, let me stop. I love you, and I forgive you, and you forgive you. Bye. Oh no, I knocked over the camera.